Hello, and welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chris Lee. Today's guest will be Mitch Light. He is the sideline reporter for Vanderbilt football. He is also the executive editor of Athlon magazine and its fine family of publications. Today's episode is presented by the Well Coffee House, a Nashville area coffee house that provides fresh roasted coffee along with its house-made pastries, breakfast, and lunch offerings. There are 4 locations to serve you in the Nashville area. Those can be found in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. More information can be found at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We thank our co-sponsor, WellSpire, which is Nashville's Learning and Development Center. That is located in the Gulch. Our news presented by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in any type of accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Vanderbilt gets a much-needed win in football. It shuts out East Tennessee State 38-0 on Saturday. Also gets a blowout win in men's basketball on Friday night. The Commodores improved to 4-1 with a blowout win of South Carolina State. Today's guest line brought to you by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on their sheets for years and would not trade them for anything. They are fair trade certified, which means they are made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. You can return them, but you won't want to once you get their sheets. Try their mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Help out those who help the podcast and take advantage of a terrific product while you are at it. Mitch Light is with us now. Mitch, it has been an eventful week for Vanderbilt sports. I'm in Colorado as we speak, and we are going to hit with a snow bomb bad enough that they've already canceled schools in advance out here, which is rare. So I'm looking forward to seeing a blizzard coming our way. My kids are looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to doing the podcast with you today. Hope you are doing well, sir.
I'm doing well. It's not snowy in Nashville. It's a typical, I guess, November day. Cold in the morning, not so cold in the afternoon. But stay safe, I guess, and stay inside.
Well, let's talk Vanderbilt. The last week, man, it wore me out in so many ways. And I will talk about the stuff with the Mason decision that Malcolm Turner has announced. In some other podcasts this week, you and I will probably hit it in the mailbag, but just to differentiate, I want us to spend most of our time on football and basketball today. Let's start with basketball and go there first. Vanderbilt is now 4-1. Its one game that it has lost was by 1 point in overtime. Granted, Vanderbilt has not played a terribly difficult schedule, but I think this represents progress. I did not get to see the game on Friday night because I was out here. I was watching, actually, my nephew who plays at Wyoming. They played Colorado State, and he had a catch and a couple of special teams tackles. And I watched that game in 10 degrees, which was miserable. But you got to see the South Carolina State game. Let's rewind there with your observations.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I want to preface this. Everything goes with the schedule has not been difficult, and they're winning games are supposed to be winning. But Vanderbilt played well Friday, except for about a 4-minute stretch early in the second half, but took care of business in a manner you would expect them to. And we probably talked about this last week, but my main takeaways so far have been they're a much better coach team so far, and they're a fun team to watch. And, again, I don't want to have to preface everything I'm saying. If in 2 months they're really struggling offensively against SEC teams, we can talk about that. But I just think they're running more offense. They're getting better shots, more cohesive on both ends of the floor. And, the shooting percentages reflect that. And again, the competition, you're going to get better shots when you have a talent advantage. But they're shooting 53% as a team overall and 42% or 41% from three because they're getting good shots because the right people are taking the right shots at the right time, in the right spots of the floor. So yeah, Friday specifically, got off to a nice start, and then like a second half, I think they cut a 19-point lead to maybe 9 or 7, and then you look up 5 minutes later, and Vanderbilt's up by 25 or 30 points. So it was nice to see Cleavon Brown bounce back because he did not play well against Austin Peay. And Jerry Stackhouse was funny because he definitely called him out after the Austin Peay game. And then after the games Friday night, he said, I rewatched the game and Cleavon wasn't necessarily as bad as I thought. So maybe he should have played some more, which I thought was kind of funny and also revealing, because one of my things I did not love about the Bryce Drew era was publicly, just in press conference settings and on the radio, he never said anything. Like as a fan of the team, I've never felt that you understood what the coach thought. Like, and I know he was Mr. Nice Guy and didn't want to say anything bad about anyone, or if it was, intentional, just not to give anything away. Like, you can watch a press conference from Kevin Stallings and know what he thought of his team, good or bad. Same thing with Jerry Stackhouse. So I felt like I learned about the team when I listened to those head coaches. I felt like I didn't know what the coaching staff thought about the team during the Bryce Drew era. That might be a small thing, but it's maybe because I'm in the media, but it's something I really pay attention to. Aaron Nesmith has been as good of an opening stretch as probably any Vanderbilt basketball player that I've seen. The sustainability, I don't know. Can someone shoot 57% from three for the season as a high-volume three-point shooter? It's never been done. Don't think it'll happen. But for a guard to be shooting 62% overall and 57% from three, and it's been incredible. And so he stood out. And Saben Lee's played very well. So kind of a keep rambling there. I thought Dylan Dessou played well Friday. His emergence as maybe a third scorer would really help this team. So I waffle back and forth between saying, you look at the overall talent, it's not there. They're really, really going to struggle. And then you counter that by saying they got a great player in Nesmith, a very, very good player in Saben Lee, and some decent parts. So is it enough to be competitive in the SEC? We'll find out. But, I'm enjoying watching this team so far.
You use the adjective fun, and that's not one that I thought we would be using. I thought this would be a year where they were winning a lot of these games, say in a 71-59 fashion. And look, this is not the Bomb Squad or any of those other teams by any stretch of the imagination. But to see Vanderbilt shooting from three-point range at the rate that it is really, really surprising.
Scored 90 points or more in 3 straight games. And I'm with you. I thought, basically also listening to Stackhouse in the offseason, with his defensive focus, if they're, I would say they're, like you said, they're going to be winning games 57 to 52, and that, that might change later in the year, but they have, I don't care the competition. When you're scoring 97 points and 90 points and 93 points, you're doing some good things offensively.
How much do they use backdoor cutting and fast breaking in the Friday game? Because all I saw was the box score. Again, I was at my nephew's football game, but that's one thing that stuck out to me against Austin Peay is last year when they got in an offensive rut, they didn't have any wrinkles like that they ran. Those were two things that they did when APSU was giving them issues in the zone that really helped loosen up things on that end of the floor. I was curious as to what they did on Friday.
Yeah, Chris, the games blend together, and I was thinking about that. Then I was realizing that it was the Austin Peay game that I'm thinking of, some of the backdoor cuts. But they got, some Saben Lee, breaking down the defense, guys rolling to the basket, a lot of easy baskets. Cleavon Brown had like probably 4 or 5 dunks off of just nice, passes once the initial defense was broken down. I don't recall many backdoor passes necessary because I don't think they were overplaying them they're playing different style defense. But clearly, I think Saben had 9 assists or something like that. So the passing continues to be good. And I was talking to my son about this. I think I can't remember more than maybe any shots where Aaron Nesmith has taken an ill-advised shot. Like, I think he's a very unselfish kid. He's just taking him in the flow of offense. Like, sometimes, Saben will take a three that maybe, you have to take them if you're him, because at least if you don't shoot them at a high percentage, that's one thing. But if you don't take them, then they won't guard you. But if you take them and then you make maybe 25%, they've got to at least be aware of it. So I think it's okay that Saban's taking shots. But I guess my point being just that there's not a lot of ill-advised shots. I think, not to make rip on the guy or anything, but I think whenever Matthew Moyer takes a three, I think that's an ill-advised shot. But other than that, I think the shot selection's been very good.
Yeah, Nesmith has been the guy who gets the attention, and rightfully so, and I agree with what you said on shot selection. I think he's great at it. His year and his stats right now speak for themselves, but I think maybe as much or more than what they have done to get what they are getting out of Nesmith. I think I'm maybe more impressed with what they were doing with Saben Lee. Saben was a kid that we just didn't know if he had a role. Like, of course he had a role, but I mean, we didn't know, was he a point guard? Was he a combo guard? If he's a shooting guard, he's got to shoot better. If he's a point guard, he's got to make better decisions naturally within the flow of the offense. And of course, Jerry Stackhouse took criticism for bringing him off the bench, but he has now had, I think, 8 and 9 assist games. He's scoring 18, 19, 20 points a lot of nights. Again, when the competition comes, and it's coming, a step up is coming soon, and then a big step up comes in January. But all you can do is play the hand you're dealt at the moment. And I think right now they seem to be doing a really good job of getting the most out of Saben Lee.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, I had no problem with him not starting because he's averaging 29.6 minutes. So he's second on the team in minutes. I think some people just like to complain about things. Now, I might change my tune if in SEC play they open up and there's a game where they're down 10-2 in the first 3 minutes because they can't get anything going offensively because Saban's not on the floor. And then maybe he'll change that up. But I think right now I like the rotation with Saben coming off the bench. We haven't mentioned Scotty Pippen yet. He had his best game the other day. He hit some timely shots and just very comfortable with the ball. The issues with him we saw in the Austin Peay game are defensively. I just worry about him guarding SEC caliber guards, keeping them in front of him. He's got to get bigger and physically stronger. But he's so far. I didn't really know what to expect from him. We heard good things in the offseason about him, so he's probably a little bit more productive, a little bit better than I expected. But I think they're going to have he's going to have some trouble defensively against some really good guards.
Yeah, I'm with you. Offensively, I did not expect to see him doing what he's doing. And now, look, to some extent, just by being on the floor and playing, you're going to rack up numbers that kids before you didn't. And so he's getting the benefit of playing time that on most Vanderbilt teams he would not. But again, you play the hand you're dealt, and I think he's done well with that.
Right, he's shooting 47%. It's not uncommon for even a good college guard to shoot in the low 40s or high 30s. I think he's been pretty judicious with his shot selection, and he's kind of showed some savvy around the basket, being able to get to the rim and some floaters and stuff like that. And I like he's taken some big shots. He doesn't appear, he's a very calm kid. Doesn't appear that the stage so far has been too big for him.
The other development I'm watching is what happens in the post. And Cleavon Brown has mostly been good. He's had some down times. And, of course, any post-foul trouble is always going to be an issue.
It's just Friday, by the way. I know you didn't see the game. He was very good on Friday, very active around the basket, active around the rim, caught everything and dunked things quickly. So he was really good on Friday.
Well, and the other development is Ejike Obinna has taken some small steps. And, again, I know competition, but – he was fouling out against Clark Atlanta in some of the first games. He now seems like he is figuring out a way to stay on the floor. He has shown this at times in the past and has shown this some this year. He can give them some low post scoring. So suddenly if he can stay on the floor and Cleavon Brown plays at the level he's been playing at or close to it, suddenly you might have a competent 1-2 tandem at that 5 spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you can – some people might say, well, there's no low post scoring, no feeding the post, but you watch college basketball now and very few teams, have a guy where they really just, post them up and feed them. The game has just changed so much. So, yeah, Ejike, the last couple of games definitely has been better as far as staying out of foul trouble. One thing that we did not talk about, the free throw shooting like last year continues to be a problem. And Jerry Stackhouse mentioned that, shooting 61% from the floor. And the concerning thing is Nesmith is only 64%. I don't know what he shot net last year. I assume it was better, and I think he'll shoot better. But if he's going to be, him and Saben Lee are primary ball handlers, he needs to shoot better, especially when he's been so good. He shot 82% last year. I'm looking at his numbers. Last year, he shot 39% from the floor, 61% this year, 33.7% from three, at 57% this year. So again, these numbers aren't sustainable. It's just I've watched enough college basketball to know that. But he's been really, really good.
It's odd that he's almost shooting a better percentage when he's guarded and
Right.
active than he is when everybody's still and he's 15 feet away. But
right. Well, one guy that and I watched the game Friday night. No, was it Monday? The Austin P game. I think Willie Donick sat up with me, and I was like sitting with Willie because he played the game and played for a North Carolina disciple, so he was commenting a lot of the Stackhouse stuff that Vanderbilt's doing, from the that Vanderbilt did when he was in school under Fogler and stuff. But we were both kind of surprised by Jordan Wright. He's played, I think he played 20-something minutes the last two games maybe, and he's giving him he's got a little savviness to his game too. I had probably zero expectations for him this year, but last couple of games he's done some nice things.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too. I still can't identify like any one skill or trait that he does well, and I'm going to be interested to see how that goes. But he is producing more than I thought. And of course, speaking of freshmen, Dylan Dessou has a double-double Friday. Again, let's temper expectations, and I think the games coming up are going to be a nice barometer to see what they can do stepping up. But all of a sudden, you're starting to see, okay, they've got three guards that give them a competent backcourt, it would seem. Dessou, if he can play the four and play it well, which I think he's capable of doing. Now, as a freshman, he's going to struggle. That's another piece that fills in at that spot. We just talked about the post. You give them right off the bench. Suddenly you could start to see roles coming together in a way that did not happen a year ago, where they just had mismatched parts and really none of them did much at any time once they lost Garland.
Yeah, one thing, too, about Dessou, he's got really long arms. There was, I think, two passes on Friday where they were thrown to him, and I was thinking there's no way, or maybe it's a rebound. He was able to corral a pass and a long rebound with long arms. Seems to have good hands, too. You might know Otan Jankovic was not in uniform on Friday. I don't know if they are going to try and redshirt him. He's played 4 games. You can have it's not like the football rule where you can play 4 games and then redshirt. Like there's no limit. There's a number of games in basketball, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there still has to be an injury involved, but they can always come up with an ankle injury, or something like that. So I don't know if they're planning on redshirting him or if he was just hurt the other day.
Yeah, and that's where being out of town, I just have not been as plugged in. But that's one that I might even send Andy Boggs a text while we're doing this and see if I can find anything out. But anything else with hoops before we go to football?
No. Well, one thing, the one player we haven't mentioned, Max Evans, again, talk about things that might not be sustainable, is shooting 53% from 3. He's 8 for 15, hit a couple the other day. So, Max is a guy that on occasion, he looks like he can be a legit SEC rotation guard. Then sometimes you look and say, he doesn't belong on the floor other games. But if he can develop some more consistency with his jump shot, obviously he's starting right now, playing 23 minutes, and we know he's a good defensive player. So anything he can give you on offense is a plus. Yeah,
I got my quick response. I texted it as we're doing the podcast, and the answer is this is unknown right now, or that they don't know either. So we're going to check on that and continue to follow through. But anyway, whatever the situation is with them at the moment, it's not public.
Okay.
Let's talk football. Where would you like to start?
Kind of didn't know what to expect on Saturday. You expected Vanderbilt to win the game comfortably, but we've seen there's been, most of the FCS over FBS teams or upsets happen earlier in the year, but you got a Vanderbilt team that's obviously struggling big time and confidence issues. And ETSU, though not good, had lost 6 of its previous 7 games or 5 of its previous 6 games by a touchdown or fewer. So, a couple of years ago, TSU almost beat Vanderbilt, and Derek Mason's first year, Vanderbilt needed a late stop to beat Charleston Southern. So, just give the team credit for just absolutely dominating defensively. I think their first – I'm going to look this up. Got the box score right here. ETSU's first drive – they had one drive, basically, that they got a 61-yard drive that ended up in a missed field goal. Other than that, their longest drive was 22 yards. Second half, 4 plays, -4 yards, 3 plays, 1 yard, 3 plays, -8, 5 plays, 6 yards, 3 plays, 0 yards. And Mitchell Pryor, basically the walk-on running back, ruined Vanderbilt's quest to hold ETSU under 100 yards. because they had 96 yards, I believe, going into that last possession. And if Vanderbilt would have just kind of methodically run out the clock, then ETSU wouldn't have the ball again. He scores a touchdown. Then ETSU gets 9 yards on its last possession to climb over the 100-yard mark. So, again, took care of business. Doesn't, really prove anything or solve anything, but it sure beats the alternative.
What stood out defensively to me was Dio Odingbo. It was the fact that they got pressure on the quarterback. They got a blocked kick from Cam Tidd. But what did they do differently there?
I mean, I think it's just a mismatch, just a dominant mismatch. Just controlled the line of scrimmage. I thought Vanderbilt offensively necessarily didn't always control the line of scrimmage like you would expect, but defensively they did. And, ETSU plays so many quarterbacks. They could, it seems like it's hard to get into an offensive rhythm there. And give them Vanderbilt credit for shutting down the running back. What was his name? Quay Holmes, who rushed for 200-something yards, school record a couple of weeks ago. Already had 1,100 rushing yards this season. He had 11 carries for 10 yards, so completely shut him down. So, this team's been criticized a lot this year, so give them credit for taking care of business. And the one thing that ETSU had done well on paper was run the ball. They had two good running backs. And, Sailors had ended up with 51 yards on 14 carries, but again, shutting down Quay Holmes. I talked to the ETSU play-by-play guy before the game, and he said that's what they do. They lean on Holmes, and that's a big part of their offense. And Vanderbilt from the get-go shut him down.
On offense, I thought Vanderbilt threw the ball downfield more than it has maybe all season. Of course, they got Pinckney involved. They got Lipscomb involved. I don't know if that was a matchup thing or a harbinger of what they will show against Tennessee, but it's something that stood out to me watching from TV.
I had heard that Riley Neal had a good week of practice. Take that for what it is. That he threw the ball well all week in practice. And I think it was just you probably go into that game with more confidence because of the opponent. And once you start to do things well, once you start to enjoy some success. Now, this is one thing, being on the field, I noticed this because a lot of balls were kind of thrown towards the Vanderbilt sideline. They threw more late, like Riley threw the ball more to receivers before they came out of their break than I can recall in the past. And that goes with throwing the ball downfield. That's what you have to do. But, there's several plays, Cam Johnson's going 12, 15 yards, and Riley's throwing the ball right as Cam's getting ready to break, and and did it to Lipscomb. So there's just, like you said, more downfield stuff, but more timing stuff. Yeah, just everything about the passing game was better, and we'll see if they can carry that over. Obviously, Tennessee's the opponent's much better this week, but it sure beats. Riley goes 16 for 24 for 179 and 2 touchdowns. That's I'd rather see that than 9 for 20 and struggle to throw the ball against ETSU, because we have seen Vanderbilt struggle offensively against these FCS teams in the past.
Let's go ahead and go to the mailbag because I think the rest of the topics we need to cover are there. Our mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan Josh Minton, an independent insurance agent operating out of Brentwood. If you are looking for a one-stop shop to take care of your insurance needs, Josh can help you out. Call him at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him at Joshua Minton HQ on Twitter or at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. Try him and tell him you heard about it on this podcast. 81J says, what did you see Saturday that gives reason for optimism for this next week's game, which, of course, is Tennessee?
Yeah, I guess I would say the offensive game plan, confidence, flexibility, getting Jared Pinckney, for whatever the reasons he has not been involved, and there are many, I guess, or whatever, but he was involved on Saturday and he played well. Kalijah was involved, so they got their offensive weapons involved. So I think there's a confidence level playing Tennessee. These guys have beaten him 3 straight years, and not every Tennessee, 3 years ago, there was a good Tennessee team that came in here. It was 8-4, ended up blowing out Nebraska in the Music City Bowl. So it's not just that feasting on Tennessee teams that haven't been good. So I think there's some confidence there. In Tennessee, I give them credit. They have played well of late, but it's not like they are steamrolling really good competition. They beat Mississippi State by 10. South Carolina, that was a nice win, 20. Beat Kentucky by 4, Missouri by 4. So again, the Tennessee's playing very well, and they're favored by 3 touchdowns. I thought it'd be about 14 or 15 points. It's 20 points, but I would forced to pick, I'd pick Tennessee to win the game, but I wouldn't be shocked if Vanderbilt went down there and played very well.
Door74 asks a question that you've mostly covered, but I will use this as an opportunity for you to add anything that we did not get to. He says, regarding ETSU, was your sense that they were overmatched, or did Vanderbilt actually do something differently?
I don't think Vanderbilt did anything differently. I think it's probably 75% overmatched and 25% Vanderbilt playing well. Just gaining confidence due to the matchups. I listened to Randy Sanders' post-game show, and he commented about the physical dominance of Vanderbilt. He said they had wide receivers that looked like our defensive ends, and I just think it was a little bit of everything, and playing well. It's easier to play well when you're more talented than the next guy, the guy across from you, but that doesn't guarantee success. So again, give him credit, but also a lot of it was due to the opponent.
I'm going to combine these two questions because I think they may be related. Ann Arbor Door says, why didn't Mitch pick Pinckney as his player of the game? And Vandy Nash says, why doesn't Pinckney ever speak to the media after games?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't aware that he never spoke to the media. It's not always the best player. It's sort of like who's around and who I can grab. Vaughn had a great game, and I wanted to get Caleb Peart defensively because I never talked to him before, and Odingbo. I saw Odingbo kind of walk out of the locker room when I was trying to grab people. Usually Larry Leathers helps me out, so it's a very inexact science there about who. It's not always the best player of the game. It's just sort of like who's around, who's available, and who I can grab. So, and I don't know. I wasn't aware that because I never really pay attention to who goes in the media room because I'm in the locker room doing my thing.
Yeah, I don't believe we've seen Pinckney since sometime in September.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he told Larry or the staff that he just doesn't want to, doesn't want to talk to the media.
Yeah, that has been known to happen there from time to time. So this next one, I think, is also from Vandy Nash. Had Andy Ludwig stayed, do either of you feel Vanderbilt would have won more games, and if so, how many?
Very, very difficult, obviously, to answer that hypothetical, but I was an Andy Ludwig fan. I thought one of the things he did very well was, get the tight ends involved. And, when the tight end is the focal point of the offense, when the defense knows that, it's not always easy to get them open. And I just think you look at the numbers last year, and Vanderbilt finished fourth in the SEC in yards per play in conference games, which is pretty darn good. I know there are a lot of fans who didn't like him. I never got that, never understood that. I will say this year, about Pinckney, and Vanderbilt has had some tight end injuries. Cody Markell has not played like the last 8 or 9 games, and he wasn't a big weapon in the passing game, but he was a very good blocker. Vanderbilt is, despite the fact that it seems like they sign a lot of tight ends, is thin at tight end this year, and I think Pinckney has had to block more than you would like to see. Now, I'm not making excuses. It's just kind of something that I realized the other day when I realized that Markell has not played much. But I think losing Andy Ludwig was a blow to this offense because I think he's very good.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say they would not have been any worse. I can't think of a game that they won that they weren't going to win with Andy as coordinator. When you get into saying record, well, here's the problem. All 8 of their losses have been by 17 points or more. Right. Now, having said that, I think this whole thing has collapsed, and when it's a disaster, it sort of transcends the stats. So I guess the issue is, could Andy have held things together in a way that Godowski could not have? I think the answer to that is yes. So the question is, where are the games that they could have won? I don't know. Maybe South Carolina would have been an opportunity. UNLV certainly would have been an opportunity. It's just hard. When everything goes as poorly and just it becomes the disaster that this is, Bunny, it's just really hard to separate things out.
Right. And quarterback play might have been different, better. It's fun to talk about, and we're on a podcast. It's fun to talk about, but it's really hard to answer it. But speaking of UNLV, by the way, Tony Sanchez and his staff were just the UNLV announced that they're parting ways with him. So his big win in Nashville was not enough to save his job.
Wow. Which begs some questions about what happened last week. But anyway, VU Titan says basically he gets no help from the passing game and subpar offensive line. With that, do you think that Vaughn getting over 1,000 yards rushing is one of the greatest accomplishments for a Vanderbilt athlete in recent memory?
It was a nice accomplishment because he's right. Not much help. I think Keyshawn's had a more impressive year than last year, even though his numbers were gaudier last year. All his big plays, he had a lot more help last year, a lot more diversity in the offense. So yeah, I think he's been great all year. It reminds me of in the mid '90s when the offense was really bad. I think Jermaine Johnson had either 1,000 or 2,000-yard seasons, and maybe Ralph Webb's maybe his redshirt freshman season when he had almost 1,000 yards. Now Keyshawn Vaughn's better than Ralph Webb. But that does make that feat that much more impressive when you do not have a passing attack to balance what you do in the running game when everyone knows that they're going to that you can't really throw the ball effectively down the field.
S. Butler IV says, "What are realistic expectations for the 2020 football season? What would athletic director Malcolm Turner or whoever actually gets to make decisions consider a successful season? Does anything that happens next season even matter because new facilities will not have been constructed by then?"
Oh, I can't answer the second part. What they need to do to impress, the bosses. On paper, the defense will be better. Caleb Peart, I believe, is the only rotation guy who's a senior. Now that the next part of that you have to ask, are the guys coming back? Are they good enough to make a difference? I think there are some talented players on defense. I don't know, not a scout. I don't know how many future NFL players there are. There's a lot of nice pieces in the secondary, but a lot of those guys got hurt and there's been no continuity there. It's difficult to sit here and say that there's going to be, a lot of improvement on offense on paper. You would think it has to be improved because it was so bad, but we've talked about, I know you mentioned a lot, the quarterback is probably not on the roster, so we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Who are the skill players? Is Jamari Wakefield back? Is Keon Brooks an every down back? I think there's enough talent at wide receiver to work with to replace Kalijah Lipscomb, but you're worried about a pass-catching tight end. I think Gavin Schoenwald can develop into that. So, on paper, Vanderbilt will, be shocked if Vanderbilt's picked anywhere other than last in the SEC East, and rightfully so, based on what they have coming back from what has been a very disappointing season.
Door74 says, "Do you have any insight regarding athletic director Malcolm Turner's Mason announcement, both with regard to timing and content? Any insight on the plans Malcolm Turner has stated are being drawn up?"
I don't really have any insight necessarily. The timing, I think if you've decided you're not going to fire him, you might as well go ahead and announce it. I've always thought that uncertainty is the worst thing for the players, if they don't know. So I think if you're going to bring them back, I don't know any of the reasons why not, Chris, I always say, you know more than me on most stuff like that. I've heard a lot of stuff about plans, architects, things happening. I know people have heard that for years. My opinion would be if it's going to happen, they need to announce stuff sooner rather than later to kind of show that there are actually things in motion, because the longer it doesn't happen, then the more people who were skeptical become more skeptical. So, I like what I've seen from Malcolm Turner so far in a lot of regards, and I thought he made the difficult decision to fire Bryce Drew, which I was in favor of, and I think he's kind of taking a big picture look at football now, and I kind of agreed with his statement whether or not you thought Mason should be back or not. He took a kind of a big picture. There's a lot of things that need to be put in place before Vanderbilt can sustain any kind of success in football. And hopefully those things are happening. And, when they're announced, if and when they're announced, then we can talk about it then. But so no real inside information other than just kind of my thoughts.
From everything I have heard, he's aiming really high with this. So the story that's maybe not being talked about, and I hear concerns internally now, because there are concerns does not validate them, but this is just what I'm hearing from people inside that building. The concern is that there will be a disconnect between what Malcolm wants and what the board will approve. Now, again, that is not a prediction. I don't know, but I'm just telling you that comes from straight inside Magoogan, that everybody's sitting around nervously waiting to see, because Malcolm, from what I understand, is not going about this in a halfway manner. He is shooting for things that he thinks will be real fixes that will give them a chance. And now it's like, I used this analogy in another post. Is it like we're talking about going out to nice dinner, and Malcolm wants Jay Ruby's, and the administration says, hey, let's hit Jay Alexander's or something south of there that's nice, but not what he wanted instead. Again, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but that is a lot of what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I don't know to that extent. And, they just need to do something. And if Malcolm gets what he wants, that's awesome. If it's just a nice meal instead of a 5-star meal, maybe that's fine too. You can win some games with a nice meal. But I agree. How do I say this? Like, I think the people that think that like Malcolm Turner's doing nothing. I mean, it's hard for us. We hear things behind the scenes. And nothing's really been announced, so all we can do is say that we've heard things. So but the people that want to be skeptical, I get that. But my stance is every time there's a new coach, every time there's a new athletic director, a new chance, whatever, like I'll just give them the benefit of the doubt until I hear otherwise, or until it's proven otherwise. And that's kind of my opinion of the Malcolm Turner regime so far.
Yeah, and I think a lot of stuff right now is sort of out of his hands. I think that contract was one that he did not ask for, the one with Derek and some other things. And decisions have always been made over there by a pretty tightly drawn circle that doesn't talk about those a lot. I don't know if that changes going forward, if that's the case now, but those were I'll just put it this way. My conversations and text messages that I had last week were very interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's nice at least to have the athletic director in place who sees the need and is pushing for these things, because that has not been the case in recent years.
Mitch, with that, I think we hit most of the main topics today, and I will get into in some other podcasts this week with some other guests more on the decision, but I wanted to do some different content today, and frankly, I'm worn out from it all. I don't think I've ever been more exhausted by a week of covering this beat than I was last week. With that said, let's close the show. I want to give you a chance to discuss anything else that we didn't get to, give out your Twitter handle, and, of course, the places where people can buy their issues of Athlon and its various sports publications.
Well, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think our college basketball magazines are still out, although the season's almost a month old. But we're already working on our baseball magazine for next year, and before you know it, we're working on our college football, which obviously don't come out until June. But that's almost a year-long thing, and I can be reached at Athlon Mitch.
Thank you, Mitch.
All right, Chris.
He is Mitch Light of Athlon. He is also the sideline reporter for Vanderbilt football. I am Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening. We will have more episodes coming your way later this week.